Thank you, Johnny. Isn't it good to hear scripture that's about fruit when you're eating fruit?
Yeah.
And how were the pancakes today?
Good.
Yay! Thank you to council members who were cooking and others who joined in to help. And thank you for all those who came and cut fruit yesterday. Thanks to those who came and set up this morning, and to all those who are going to help with cleanup later on. We're just so glad to be able to do this all together. So
the council members by proxy.
that's right. All those who go with the council members. So my name is Kirsten, if I haven't met you before, and I have the privilege of being the pastor here at College Park Covenant. And if you didn't know this, I was on a sabbatical recently. And a sabbatical is a time when a pastor takes a time away from work, time away from being with the congregation in order to rest and in order to renew. And so this fall, I'm going to be little by little reporting back to you about my sabbatical time. And I'm going to tell you how the sabbatical went, what I learned, what I noticed, and I'm hoping that you might also get a chance to tell me what you learned and what you noticed as you were one anothering here at College Park. And so the framework that I'm going to use to tell you about my sabbatical is I'm going to drill down into the root word of sabbatical, which is Sabbath. I'm going to talk about the concept of Sabbath. What is it? And why does it matter? We will talk about Sabbath, and I will tell you my stories, and I'm going to show you my photos. Today we don't have a projector, with and screen and all that kind of stuff, and so I do have some pictures playing on my laptop, but it looks kind of dark over there, so maybe it's not working. I'll play them later. These are pictures from what I'll be telling you about today. So in the Bible, right at the very beginning, in the first couple chapters of Genesis, we hear this word Sabbath. And but it seems to get a lot more serious when we get around to the word Sabbath, when it's listed in the 10 Commandments. Does everybody remember or have heard about the 10 Commandments? We read about them in Exodus chapter 20, and this is 10 principles, 10 commands, 10 rules or guidelines that God gives the people of Israel just as they are coming out of slavery in Egypt. And so the people of Israel were in Egypt for 400 years. It had been just Jacob's family, but that grew, and they became a whole people, a whole line of people over those 400 years. And so they had never, even though they were a people, they weren't living in the context of having their own laws. They didn't have their own traditions, their kind of guidelines of how they were to be a people. And so the 10 Commandments are really God's way of giving the people of Israel some kind of rubric, a way to start thinking about how to be a society. So God gave the 10 Commandments, these 10 principles, and they're this ethical and moral framework by which people can live by, like don't kill people, don't steal from others, don't lie, don't take another person's spouse as your own. And so these are all things that would be dangerous to society, dangerous to people. These are things that people are going to get hurt when we do this. And so these are these ethical and moral principles that God gives. And so then as we go along, we come to the one where it says, remember the Sabbath. This is one of the 10 commandments, one of those 10 principles. Exodus 20, it says, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week to do your ordinary work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the seas, and everything in them, but on the 7th day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the 7th day and set it apart as holy. So, why is remembering the Sabbath one of the 10 commandments? How is it listed along with these ethically and morally dangerous kinds of issues? All of a sudden we see the Sabbath. So Wayne Muller writes in a book, and it's called Sabbath, and he says, how can forgetting to be restful, forgetting to sing songs and take delight in creation be as reprehensible as murder, robbery, and deceit? How can it be as bad? So let me tell you a little story. Steve and I, we were married very young, and we were still in the middle of university. We were studying and continuing our schooling after we got married, and at that time we were at the University of Calgary. So Steve was studying theater, I was studying music, and in addition to the university classes and the homework that we were given every day, I was expected to practice the piano for about 3 hours every day. And then I was also expected to compose music because I was doing composition as a major. And I was supposed to compose music for another 3 hours every day. And then Steve was doing his classes all day, getting homework. And then he would go, right after that was over, he'd go to rehearsal for whatever play he was in. And he'd be in rehearsal till 11 p.m. That's when he'd be kind of let out to go home. And so we found that we would kind of pack a lunch and a supper every day. And we would then fit in our part-time work because we also needed to pay for food and stuff like that. And so we were fitting that work in amongst the practicing and the rehearsing. We were fitting it all in. Sometimes we would meet in like cross paths, and we'd both gobble up our Tupperware full of tuna casserole, which is a whole nother story of how many tuna casseroles we ate, because that was all we could afford to make for many, many years. And so we would eat our tuna casserole for maybe 10 to 20 minutes. We'd have this cross, and we'd run on to the next task that was before us. And so when we were at home, we were in this little basement suite. We shared a bathroom with our neighbor. And we would get home and we'd go right to work because we had so much to do, so much homework to finish. And so we would work till late, and then we would get up early again to catch the bus to start it all over again. If you don't know this about both Steve and I, we kind of tend to be perfectionists. We kind of do things, we have a hard time not doing things fully. And so there's no real halfway. So both of us, then you kind of take these two people and then you put them into a marriage together, and we have a very intense sort of set of expectations for ourselves. And so we would be working so hard. This pace that we set for ourselves was kind of crazy. In the midst of this, we started getting involved with a church plant. at the time, and so we volunteered, of course, to lead Bible studies and lead worship on Sundays and do this and that, and we just kind of kept signing up for more. Fortunately, by God's grace, our pastor at the time, Rob Peterson, offered a book club, which of course Steve and I immediately will be in the book club with all our spare time to read some more books. And we were in this book club, and I would say that we were in this book club about 29 years ago, this coming spring, okay? So once we come to the spring, it'll be 29 years. And I would say it was revolutionary to our lives. In fact, I would even say it saved our lives. Our pace and our productivity at getting things done was killing us. The way we were living, filling our lives to the bursting point with all good things, was actually doing violence to our souls. Depression and anxiety were already knocking at our door. Our relationship was being pushed and hurt. We discovered, slowly hurting ourselves by our insistence on doing it all, doing it perfectly, and never, ever stopping. So the book for that book club was called Keeping the Sabbath Holy by Marva Dawn. I've got a couple copies on my shelf. This book introduced us to the principle of Sabbath. The principle of Sabbath Sabbath isn't just a day like every Sunday or every Saturday. The principle of Sabbath is this: a Sabbath is a way of being in time where we remember who we are, we remember what we know, and taste the gifts of spirit and eternity. Sabbath is a way of being in time where we remember who we are, remember what we know, and taste the gifts of spirit and eternity. Marva Dawn took us through, in her book, the practices of intentionally ceasing our work, our striving, our worry, the practice of rest, the practice of embracing God's goodness, and feasting. I think what was the most unbelievable thing about this book club and reading this book was at the beginning, there was an emphatic promise that we could, in fact, stop working for one whole day per week, and that we could still get what we needed to get done. And it took us a long time. Both Steve and I resisted. We said, no, not in our situation. Right? Like maybe in that story over there or in that person's, but not in our life. No, I would not be able to stop for a whole day. That wouldn't work. I wouldn't get it all done. It's not possible. And so we pushed and we fought and we insisted. There is just too much to do. We cannot stop. It is not possible. And yet, God's Spirit faithfully would not let this topic go in our lives. And because we couldn't let go of something that we had started, we had to finish the book. And we had to do the book club. And so over time, what we came to find out, what we came to discover very early in our lives, was that we could, in fact, remember the Sabbath. We could practice ceasing, stopping, resting, embracing, and feasting in the rhythm of our life and still get done what needed to be done. And to us, this felt like the feeding of the 5,000. It's impossible. It felt like a miracle. And I would say in some ways, it still kind of plays out like a miracle. Remembering the Sabbath. There's a Jewish saying that goes like this: it was not Israel that kept the Sabbath, but the Sabbath kept Israel. And looking back as we come up to celebrating our 29th year of marriage this year, I recognize that this is probably true of our marriage and of our lives. We have not kept the Sabbath. The Sabbath has kept us. I've found that the most crucial lessons of my life are the ones that kind of circle back around. And you kind of think, I should have already learned that. This has happened a number of times. And yet, those lessons just keep cycling around. And so I feel like this particular experience of a sabbatical this spring and summer was another cycle around my lifelong journey of learning how to find myself at home in God, rather than finding myself through working harder to create peace and create joy and create fulfillment. And I know that it's not just me, it's not just Steve or I who struggle with the violence our busyness and our productivity does to our souls. Our culture tells us that resting is extra. It's what many of us have grown up being taught, that if work is not being done, then life is meaningless. Then what's it about? We've come to believe that our worth equals what we can produce and what we can do. Wayne Muller, he remarks that I am so busy, this kind of response we have often when we're talking to one another, I'm just so busy, that it's a remark that we say with pride, as if our exhaustion were a trophy, our ability to withstand stress a mark of real character. And the busier we are, the more important we seem to ourselves and we imagine to others. And this has become the model of a successful life. So, Sabbath is much more than just stopping work. It's a way of being in time. Sabbath can be a Sabbath hour, a Sabbath meal, a Sabbath day, a Sabbath week, or even a sabbatical of 10 weeks. And so in my sabbatical, I needed to do a lot of ceasing, a lot of stopping, a lot of resting, a lot of embracing what is good in order to regain a Sabbath rhythm in my life. So early on in May is when I started my sabbatical, and I found that ceasing work was kind of like ripping off the parachute that was on my back, because my work is often what keeps me going, right? It orders my days, it gives me purpose, it keeps me from feeling bored or keeps me from feeling down or from feeling all the other kind of unpleasant things that happen in life. So because my sabbatical was from pastoring, and I actually didn't take a sabbatical from parenting, I did find those kids just kept needing a mother. And so it was really significant the times that I was able to be away, because there was a more clear, intense, purposeful kind of stopping or ceasing when I was away. My first time of being away in my sabbatical was a seven days of silence and solitude in Kelowna, BC. So I was on my own in a little Airbnb in downtown Kelowna. My spiritual director lives there in Kelowna, and so she received me at the airport and she took me to pick up groceries so that I was all set to go. And so that week I walked a lot, I napped, I read, I did a puzzle, I journaled. I had 2 more meetings with my spiritual director, mostly noticing how the silence and solitude felt. A big part of Sabbath is stopping so that you can pay attention to what is there. Stopping to pay attention to what is. As I paid attention to all sorts of things, especially in silence and solitude. It's interesting the kinds of memories that come up out of the blue, or the worries that I got really stuck on those days. I noticed more what I was feeling because I couldn't just cover it up with working or getting something done. One day in particular, I had been inside for a while and I was feeling kind of bad, feeling like, oh, I should be outside. It's so beautiful out there. And so I walked over to the lake. So the Lake Okanagan, or Okanagan Lake, is right what the city of Kelowna is kind of built around. And it's beautiful. The weather was lovely, and I was walking and seeing so much beauty around me. It was all so good, and yet, because I was in this space of noticing in my stopping, I was noticing that I just felt this unease in my gut. And so I was kind of trying to ignore it, like just walk a little faster, or maybe, I don't know, go a different direction. And it wouldn't really go away. And I noticed over time, okay, I gotta pay attention. What is this unease? And I realized there was just this feeling of, I wanna be at home. Not at home as in back in Saskatoon with my family, but back at home. This larger, this concept, this feeling, this place of home. And in that moment, I felt like I just needed to be back at where I was staying, where I could be alone, and I could be at home. And so I found an electric scooter, which there's lots of stories about all the scooters that I rode, where you can use an app on your phone to get the scooter and drive it. And I did electric bikes and electric scooters all over the city. But I got a scooter and I scooted home. And I spent time being in that silence, just paying attention to this deep desire to being at home. Home is where I feel safe. It's where I know all is well. It's kind of the place where I get what I need. It's home base. It's what everything launches from, in a sense. In John 15, what Johnny read for us this morning says, "Remain in me, and I will remain in you." This is Jesus' words to us. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. Make your home in me, as I make mine in you. Even looking at those 10 commandments that God gives, that he starts with, he says, number 1, I'm your only God. Don't seek out other gods. Number 2, don't make idols or fake gods, just me. Make your home in me, as I make my home in you. Right at the core of who we are is this home base that we're created for. This home base to find our home in God and God alone. Because miraculously and amazingly, God makes God's home in us. So Jesus uses this imagery of fruit, of grapes. A grape branch doesn't just hang out and make all these grapes. No, it's making grapes because it's at home in the vine. And we say we need to stay home, it says. We need to remain in that vine, remain in God in order to produce anything. It comes all from that home base. In fact, it says, apart from me, Jesus says, you can do nothing. And so the word home is important to me. For a long time, it's kind of been what I would call my sacred word. That when I'm spending time in centering prayer, when I'm sitting in silence with God, it's the word that I say that brings me back to the reality that God is right here with me in this moment. Because that's where home is. God is right here with me in this moment. And so, the Spirit of God is home. Remembering the Sabbath or practicing Sabbath is a way of being in time in which we intentionally come back home. Come back home. That definition of Sabbath, it's a way of being in time where we remember who we are. We remember what we know, and we taste the gifts of spirit and eternity. And so we cozy up to the fireplace at home. We're reminded again of who we are. I remember that I am God's. I'm Jesus's precious one. I'm the beloved daughter. At home, I am reminded again of what I know. I know God is with me, always. And I remember what God has taught me along the way. I remember grace. I remember where my safety, my security, where my acceptance lies. And I get to taste the gifts of spirit and eternity. I get to actually enjoy what is true about God. I get to enjoy the goodness of a sunrise, the beauty of color, the taste of sushi, the delight of laughter, the feeling of filling my lungs with clean air, the comfort of sweet sleep. I get to enjoy the goodness of God. And so I want to invite you to come home again through the practice of Sabbath this fall. Each week, I'm going to offer a little practice, a little small Sabbath practice to try. And today, I'm just going to offer a very simple breath prayer. A breath prayer is a way of praying not through needing to have words for everything or forcing words, but rather letting our natural breath that's in our body already just guide the prayer and letting that prayer follow our breath. So, following or focusing on our breath is one of the ways we come home. We come home when we take in a deep breath. Let's try it. And we breathe out. This is one of the gifts that brings us into awareness. I'm here. This is who I am. I'm alive. And God is present. And so we're going to do a little breath prayer this morning. It's based on Psalm 46, a very familiar phrase. It goes like this: be still and know that I am God. Can you just try and say that with me? Be still and know that I am God. One more time. Be still and know that I am God. Good. And so we're going to just let this phrase, this prayer, be go along with our breath. All right. So as you breathe in, just invite you to say in your heart. You could even breathe the words out. You can form the words with your lips if you want. But as we breathe in, we're saying, be still and know, and as you breathe out, that I am God. Let's just try that a couple times. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know. And now, as you continue to breathe, I invite you to let one word go at a time. So this time we leave off the word God. As we breathe in, be still and know that I am. Now we leave out that I am. Breathe in, be still and know. And now, just to be still. Breathe in, be still. And finally, be. I invite you to continue to breathe, paying attention, a couple more breaths, being at home. Lord Jesus, we find our home in you again and again and again. God, may you bring our attention, bring our awareness to this truth of your goodness, your eternity, your presence with us, that we might remember who we are, remember what we know, that we might taste the gifts of your Spirit and eternity.